I think drinking coffee before these things should definitely become a thing. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. So, first video, let's get into it. Today I'm going to talk about my first year of my PhD and overcoming self-doubt. I started my PhD journey in 2016 and I came up straight off undergrad computer science course. And in my first couple of weeks I found it fantastic. I was reading all these different papers and I was trying to come up with all these ideas. But I remember distinctively going home that Christmas sort of not as enthusiastic as I started, and I started having a lot of self-doubt about what I was doing. I was unenthused. I didn't have any like solid ideas that I felt like I was doubling down on, and at the time I was kind of in this mindset of I had to look for the greatest and best like world-changing idea. And then when I came back then in sort of January and after taking like the Christmas break, I thought I'd pick up some inspiration, but it still wasn't really going anywhere. And eventually I kind of settled on a few ideas and my supervisor gave me like a lot of support and like finding something to do. And then I started sort of going in the direction, but I kept trying to like pull away. And I found it very hard to actually commit to an idea because you have this, I had this demon over the top of me, for lack of a better word really. There was like this voice niggling to my head every time, and the best way to say it is that there was self-doubt. Every time I sort of like went to work on the idea, I kept saying like, oh well, maybe it won't get published, which is absurd to think, you know, in your first PhD you're going to have this amazing published paper. But I sort of come off like a kind of a lot of victories from doing my undergraduate degree, and I was quite successful there. I got quite high grades, and I just assumed that this would continue into the PhD, not realizing the PhD is more like the real world where you just kind of like do the work and like you're evaluated by your peers, not by a marking scheme. So at this point I was doing this work and self-doubt was kind of overwhelming me. And at the time as well I had a probation tick off to kind of get checked off on. The university make sure you're on track, make sure everything's okay, you're meeting with your supervisor, stuff like that. And at the time it was not looking good because I'd been doing a lot of work, but I didn't have a lot to show for it because of this lack of commitment, this lack of starting, this more in constant idea generation mode rather than executing on the ideas. Adding on top of this, the idea that I was currently going down, with this page with this self-doubt demon, was a prototype that was incredibly temperamental, that would break on the drop of a hat, so much so that my girlfriend would call it the black box of death, because it literally was an actual black box that was causing basically burnout. Like every day I wouldn't want to work on it for fear of it breaking again and me not being able to get to the end, which was in this case doing a user study and obviously writing up the actual research I conducted on it in order to pass the probation. So you can imagine at this point the self-doubt was just this massive barrier that was stopping me from getting into the next year, so much so that I was beginning to doubt myself whether I was even in the right place and whether I should have left university when I finished my undergraduate degree. But despite these blocks and despite the prototype breaking, every day I'm going in and I'm just doubting whether the work is even worth it and having this looming deadline, I managed to bring it all together, which was, I think, a testament of like the grit and obviously wanting to do the PhD more than wanting to do the project and hoping that something good would be on the other side of it. And you know what the best thing was? Is that it turned out the work was actually good and it was actually worth doing. All this self-doubt, in the end I wrote it up and I was like, oh, this is actually quite interesting. And then we ended up publishing the work as a work in progress paper, not a full paper, but a work in progress paper, and a poster got shown at CHI, one of the big conferences in human-computer interaction. I was showing off the idea of using deformable controls for paint interactions, so when you're using Photoshop, things will actually transform to make physical paint pots, and things will transform out to like have nibs you can grab and stuff like that, hence the break-in. Actuators broke every day pretty much. They were on little wires that would go up and down, they would snap, the placement would go wrong in them, but we overcame it. And it was at this point I learned that I could do the work. I got my first win. which was amazing. And the second thing was that all work tends to be interesting. So I think that's another thing, was it wasn't like, at the time it didn't seem like world changing or publishable, and it wasn't world changing, of course, but we found something out, and that's what was interesting. And then the third thing was just about getting things done, because if I'd done this a lot sooner in my PhD, I would have had the confidence to pursue other ideas I had faster, learn to sort of fail fast, where failure is not failure as in you know, doom and gloom, but in the sense of we went and found that out and we learned from it. And so my advice here to anybody that's starting a PhD or starting a new project or trying to make a new product is to just pursue things as quickly as possible, because you'll learn very fast whether they're worth doing. Don't sit on the fence and sketch and sketch and sketch. Get your first thing under your belt. And specifically to PhD students that might be watching this, don't be like me. Don't spend all of your first year looking for that perfect world-changing idea. Spend your first year being a student of the PhD and learning how to do studies, and learning what you can actually achieve. Because by the time you hit third year then, like where I am now, you'll be through the process of doing studies and writing papers a few times, and then you'll kind of know the system, and then you'll start to do work that you really enjoy because you've got those skills in your repertoire. I struggled in my third year because I was looking for that perfect idea instead of doing the research and testing ideas. Now, I'd like to say that this story followed with me going off and learning from my first experience and knowing what to do next, but it took a few more tries. In my next one, I was faster to execute, but maybe a bit slower on a few other things. And then in my next study, it was like a lot slower on building the prototype because I sort of bit off more than I could chew. But I think I jumped into them a lot quicker and I learned these lessons faster. So now I'm pursuing this current project and I'm trying to execute as fast as I can because I know where the pitfalls can be based on my previous projects. So this is another example where getting started faster helps you in the long run. And something that really helped me recently about learning how to execute faster is a book called Sprint by Jake Knapp. And it is a book based in user experience and how Google conduct sort of their design sprint to build new projects. But I think a lot of it applies to sort of PhD students or anybody in any other fields, maybe not product design, because the principles of it, of executing fast and learning fast, even though the process is building, say, like a website within a week and testing it with users, you could probably spread that week out into a month. Say you're doing more, maybe you're a chemistry PhD student and you could kind of think, well, I kind of want to test this chemical, this chemical, this chemical, and you know, and it maybe takes a lot longer to get it done. You can do it in a week, but this kind of ethos of testing fast and learning fast really sings hard in the book. And although maybe the kind of micro principles don't apply, the macro ethos I find really helped me. So I recommend that book to any PhD students starting out. Don't buy the book that says how to get a PhD or this is how you do your thesis. Although those are probably great and helpful, I think I started a few when I started mine and I sort of got bored of them. This book shows you how to properly execute and how to execute fast, and I think it's way more useful than maybe a book that's more traditionally academic. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you found something useful about it. I hope you're inspired and motivated to get out there and do stuff and try. You can follow me on Instagram to see my day-to-day activities on my PhD. I like to show, I'm showing more and more now because I'm doing more and more, because I'm learning more and more, which is as a result of these lessons that I've shared today. So yeah, follow me on Instagram, see my daily PhD activities, and hit subscribe here as well, because I'm trying to put one of these out every week with a new lesson that I've learned from PhD life, from computer science, or stuff about user experience. Just trying to share and create more and share more and ultimately do more. So I've been Cameron, bye.